Hey guys, welcome to the Jungle Brothers podcast. It's Joey and Paul.
Good morning.
And we're down in Botany and we're recording with a good friend of ours, Melanie Corlett. Mel, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good, guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. This is our first episode. We'll tell them Mel earlier. This is our first episode where we've had a guest coming in from the internet. Lockdown has presented some unusual circumstances. But so it's really cool that we've been able to get Mel on because she was going to be here at the gym, but instead she's tuned in from another part of town. Mel, I want to give a little intro for the folks as to how I know you, and then maybe you could correct any mistakes or, change perspectives based, because I only know you really from one part of your life, which is being a fellow gym owner.
Yep.
We met through a business community that we were all part of, which I remember was a largely male-dominated group. You were one of the only females in that group. And you're a gym owner. You had a gym in Paddington, Women of Train, is that right?
Yep.
Which was a female-only gym. And that was kind of revolutionary to me. I think that's still kind of a little bit revolutionary to have maybe a business, but a gym that's only for women is quite a unique thing. And we would get together. You and I hung out. We hung out with some other gym owner friends, and we would catch up maybe once a month and have breakfast and talk about business. And it was great. I really enjoyed that. I miss now that we don't have that, because you can fill this in later, but you no longer own a gym because you moved to a new thing. But yeah, so you were always someone that I knew, a really good business owner, very ambitious, also crazy fucking strong. I don't mean that
feels like a past life now, but yeah, in my prime.
And I don't even mean that in like a esoteric sense. You could squat and deadlift real heavy, and I was like, damn, that girl squats like way more than I could ever imagine myself squatting, which is just a cool thing. I'm going to get you to tell us your numbers shortly, but yeah. And then now here we are today. You no longer own a gym, but we still have a bit of a connection, and I'm excited to have you on the show because I think there's some interesting discussion around entrepreneurialism and motherhood and just the hurdles therein and the mindset and all that stuff. And for me, I've got my boy Leo, he's 6 months. And so I've seen what my partner Misa's going through. It's not been terrifying or anything, but it's been a journey for her and it continues to be. So Paulie got like 17 kids now. Three. But, Tasha's going. Tasha, yeah, I say it. That's a lot these days, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of relevance to our lives, but also to the people that listen. So it would be a pleasure to pick your brain on all that.
Oh, I'm so honored to be here. I was so excited when you asked me. I was like, of course, I'd love to sit down and chat with you guys. It's been, we've had a lot in common over the last couple of years, and now we've also got parenthood in common, which is really exciting.
Tell us, can you give us a little walkthrough of sort of your business life and coming to own a gym and then moving out of that and just maybe, give us a bit of context about what you're doing now?
Yeah, sure. How far back do you want me to go? You're going to start like pre-gym, like what led me to that, and then we can kind of go down where I am now, or should we just start with gym?
No. Yeah. Gym, we're in no rush.
Okay. All right. Well, I did actually start my career in investment banking. So I worked, that's what I studied. I studied finance back in Montreal, which is where I'm from Canada. And I always thought I wanted to go into banking. I love numbers. I loved finance. I was obsessed with business. So I was like, investment banking, which is basically the study of businesses. I'm going to go and I'm going to work in there. And started working in there and started working in that industry. And it's miserable. Like it really kind of rips your soul out a little bit. And unless you find companies, and they do exist, which do things a little bit differently, the traditional culture of investment banking does kind of, toss you around and spit you out a little bit. So I went on did the whole breakup with my boyfriend, moved out here as like far away from the world as I could get, or far away from Canada as I could get, being Australia, and came out here, which was meant to be, just a 6-month stint, and quit my job and wanted to get out of banking and just reassess my life. Came here, met my now husband a couple months after I was here. I think I've been here almost 8.5 years now, which is kind of funny. Almost giving my mom a heart attack, I reckon, with that one. But that's been a wild ride, and he is heavily involved in fitness, and he really got me into. I'd always been involved, interested in fitness. Actually, one of my very first businesses that I started was a personal training business, just out of my college gym back in Montreal that I started, and I trained predominantly women there, and I loved it. It was one of my favorite jobs, and I did that for about 2 years, and it paid my way through uni, and it was a great time. But when I came here, you know, you kind of get into working life, and as I'm sure you guys see with some people who come through your gym, you know, you just kind of lose touch with that part of your life. So I had, and got reintroduced to it by Hamish, and he was doing CrossFit at the time. And it was my first experience with strength training and actually putting some weight on the bar and getting off the treadmill and like using my body in more of a functional way. And I loved it. It's my gosh, it's, you know, it's addictive almost. And it really changes the way you see your body and changes the way you view fitness. You're like, well, this can actually be a fun thing. It doesn't have to be a task. So got heavily into fitness with him, and it's probably maybe 2 years later that I, you know, went through all the certifications and, you know, really dove in, went headfirst into the fitness scene. And you know, it was kind of around that time where I decided, okay, I'm going to live here. This is where I want to be. And do I want to go back into finance, or do I want to try something else? And I said, you know, I think I kind of want to open a gym. And it's funny now because so naive, thinking you just open up a gym, you have this idea, it's kind of cool, you think you're a big deal, and you open up this gym and you're like, people will just come to it.
Totally, it worked out for us.
You're like, I'll open the gym and people will just show up, right? That's how that works. And it's definitely not how it works. So especially, you know, like as you mentioned, I wanted to open up a women's only gym, which I did, and really introduce women to this concept of strength training and functional movement and how empowering it was. Like, you'll have the same experience as me and it'll be awesome. But it's an entirely new concept, entirely new brand, you know, similar to you guys. You know, we're not backpacking off someone else's idea like an F45 or a CrossFit. It's like, this is a new concept and I have to educate people on what we do here. So I'm glad I had some, you know, interest in business. And that's ultimately what helped me get to a place of, you know, really falling in love with the business side of what I was doing, and, you know, building that customer base and seeing it grow, and, you know, bringing staff on and figuring out who I wanted to be as a leader within that business and how I wanted to empower other people within that business. So that was just an amazing experience. And I think definitely one I needed to have to then get me to my next kind of adventure, my next, you know, business venture, which is now Mumly, which is nothing to do with fitness, and a tech startup, which is kind of funny when I say it out loud, to be honest. But yeah, it's completely been something that has taken me by surprise. And that started out at the end of 2019. I started, you know, thinking, how can we bring this online, and how can I start doing more to help women? And we were working with a lot of pregnant women and women going through pregnancy and birth. And I was like, I've got to do something around this space to help out moms, and started doing some focus groups and just really listening to what moms needed. And initially I thought maybe I'd start something in the fitness space, but make it more online. And then the more research we did, the more I was like, no, actually, I think that the problem I'm trying to solve is a lot bigger. There's a lot more opportunity here. I don't want to just pigeonhole myself in the fitness space. I actually think I want to go a bit broader. And yeah, that's where Mumly was born. And now I can't believe it's been almost 2 years I've been working on it. But that led me to selling the gym, which was timely because COVID hit kind of right as that was happening. And yeah, I've been full-time here for about 2 years now. That was a long rant.
Not at all. I mean, there's a lot jammed into that. Is Mumly available now, or is it pre-launch?
So we're still pre-launch. We'll be going into a what's called like a soft launch, so still kind of a closed beta at the end of September. So that would be like an invite only beta. So we're just working on getting people on for a wait list now, seeing what kind of interest there is out there, and then we'll launch in a soft beta, and we'll be in that probably for about 4 months, and then we'll go into like a hard launch where it'll be open on all the app stores. You don't have to have an invite or anything. Q1 of next year.
Q1 of next year, Q1, yeah. Business talk.
Yes, yeah, sorry. So somewhere between, I'm anticipating probably Feb, March next year.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we're having a scan over the website earlier, and it looks extremely well packaged up, and I mean, it's obviously not for me, but even still, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, oh, what are the blog posts, and what are you talking about here? And yeah, it looks. I'm excited to see what that becomes.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's been a lot of work, and the team that we have they're awesome. A lot of women, a lot of moms on the team, which has been really cool. And yeah, it's been a much bigger project than I ever anticipated. If you told me a couple of years ago this is what I'd be doing, I don't know if I'd believe you, but it's turned into like a monster of a project. But it's been really exciting and really, really fun. I feel really privileged that I get to experience this actually.
Tell us about you're a mum. Tell us where you're at with that. I know pretty close. Something coming?
Yeah. So I have a daughter, Emmy. She's going to be 3 in a couple days. She'll be 3 on Monday, which is wild. I can't believe it's been 3 years, because I remember we used to do our monthly gym owner catch ups when I was, before I was pregnant, and then during my whole pregnancy with her. And now I have a little boy. He's due in September. So I'm 34 weeks today, actually. So yeah, it's been a wild ride. Hey, the making baby business it's a lot of work. I always kind of say I have 2 jobs, 2 full-time jobs. That's really how it feels most days.
So I see a common thread there, and tell me if this is intentional or not, but like when you were at a place where training was a huge emphasis for you, and that was when you operated a gym. And then as you stepped into the motherhood role, there was an evolution there. And now the business is something that is exclusively, targeted towards mums. Was that intentional, or is that just kind of how it's worked out?
I mean, I do think that we gravitate towards the things that we feel, extremely passionate about. And we go through these different, seasons of our life where things become extremely relevant, and we get, totally immersed in certain aspects or experiences in life. So I don't think it's a surprise that, I became a mom, and then all of a sudden these realities that you never really knew existed before, are kind of, splash in your face, and you're like, wow, this is what it is to be a mom. And there's a lot of things here that can be improved. There's a lot of things that can be better about this experience. And I think that's just kind of how my brain works naturally. Like I've always been a problem solver. I've always been, where are the inefficiencies, and how do we make things better, and how do we improve it? And I'm sure, as you guys can, both relate, being dads and having partners, and, experiencing what it's like to go through parenthood firsthand. There's a lot of things that you're like, this definitely be improved, and like, why does it have to be so hard? Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of where it came from.
What are some of those things for you, like looking at it as a problem solver? Where do you see, because Paul and I were having this larger conversation earlier that sort of comes up a lot, which is about this sort of parenting and fatherhood and motherhood now in this modern life, and how kind of divorced it is from what it would have been for so long through our evolution, right? When we were living in a much different sort of scenario. What do you see as those main kind of things that need improvement?
Yeah, I mean, the way I kind of look at it is there's definitely a practical element of things that are just more difficult. I think in 2021, from a practical standpoint, being, there's no like lack of information now. It's almost like we have too much information, and things are too accessible. And it's almost like, how do you, cipher through what's relevant? How do you figure out what speaks to you and what resonates with you, you know, and with all of that information comes just like a shitload of judgment and shaming and polarization. And it's much harder to just parent intuitively, I find. And that's one of the things that our platform really wants to bring back to moms, is the power to choose what information you get served, how is it served to you, making sure that, you know, people don't end up on page 26 on Google at 3 o'clock in the morning, just, you know, not even sure what they're doing there and what they're looking for. They're just kind of, they want to feel like they're doing a good job by their kids. So there's, you know, a practical sense of, we're very isolated now, I think, in our parenting experiences. We don't have that communal aspect of parenting that we used to have. And on top of that, you know, as opposed to being able to talk to, you know, your sisters and your friends who are going through parenthood, it's not, there isn't like that connection as much anymore. There isn't that like matriarchal wisdom that's kind of passed down through generations. You're kind of just like, shit, I'm a mom now. Like, what do I do? Sorry, I should have asked. Is swearing okay on your podcast?
Encouraged. Fuck yeah.
Okay. All right. Awesome. So yeah, like you kind of just get thrown into this and you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm responsible for keeping a human alive. And you have all these, you know, different things that you have to do. And then all of a sudden you're also like, who am I now? And I'm totally not prepared for this. And it's a complete identity shift. And you almost feel like, you know, you're grieving this other person that you just kind of said goodbye to quite suddenly. And you're this, you know, making babies it's not just about making babies, right? This whole process is about making moms, and you get birthed into this new identity, and a lot of times I find it's quite shocking, and that was my experience. So yeah, there's that practical aspect of it, but then I think there's like a societal aspect of it as well, which isn't as, you know, tangible, not so you know, quantitative, but very, very much like the expectations that society puts on you and how you feel you should be as a mom, and how you know, the things you think you should be doing by your daughter or your son or your family or as a partner. And as a woman, I know a lot of that's been ingrained in you from the time you were a little girl. And, you know, it's your sole purpose to just kind of, you know, grow up and have a baby. And there isn't much talk around, well, what do you do with, you know, if you want to have a career, and what do you do if you're interested in other things? And I find society doesn't really, the system doesn't really prepare women or little girls, or, I mean, families as well, like you would include men in that, for this transition. And how do we manage those expectations that we put on ourselves, and then how do we actually also practically handle that transition? So yeah, those are the two ways I think about it.
That was spot on. Like I guess you just basically spoke on a lot of things that, you know, between me and my wife, like, have struggled with over the years. Yeah, like the whole expectations thing, it's such a difficult thing to navigate through. And as you said, like, becoming a mother and then the expectations of being a mother, but then being a woman after having parents, am I expected to have a career and carry on? And like you said about like society, you know, what expectations are for you. Because I don't know, some people are career minded, and maybe some people always knew they were going to be a mother, but and some can be kind of forced into the opposite thing. It's like, oh, are you just going to be a mother type of thing? So it's like, you know, or are you going to be a serving, person who's working and building and evolving this nation and this economy by being back involved in business and working, whatever. And then you've got, you know, the workers who might not want to have kids. It's such a tricky landscape, isn't it? But yeah. I really like how you put it. I see all those as the biggest problems. Hey, and then when it comes to birthing and birth, and you're saying about being unprepared for being a mother, and far out being unprepared for giving birth. I think there's like a big gap there for a lot of young women as well.
Totally. Oh yeah, we could go down that hole if you want to, but yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, there was just a lot in there. But you've been deep in it, becoming a mum over the last 3 years. But then also the research part for your software sounds incredible. And I wanted to ask, like, first, like, how have you've started this tech thing and you weren't in this field before. Have you educated yourself to do this? Are you learning the hard way? And then who have you surrounded yourself with? Like, who's in your team and who's research? Like, what does research look like?
Yeah, no,
Questions.
That's a fun question. No, I mean, yeah, it's, I had no idea how to build an app. I think I was extremely naive in terms of how difficult it actually is and everything that goes into it and the people that are involved. So I was really lucky early on to get introduced to some amazing people who still work with me, and specifically my engineering team who are down in Melbourne, and just managed to convince these two guys who, bachelors, to come on board and help me work on this business for moms. And they've been so passionate about it since we started, but they've helped me learn, and it's been quite a steep learning curve in terms of, tech language and how apps work and what needs to go into building an app and all the different people and their different skill sets that you need to bring in. So it's been a process over the course of the last 2 years of building that team and finding the people that are the right fit culturally, but also just to have a certain skill set that you need with startups, because that is it's quite a unique flavor in the tech industry. It's, a lot of people either gear towards more of those established tech businesses, whether it be like Atlassian or Canva, Google, Facebook, or some people have that desire to work in a startup atmosphere, which is a little bit more fast-paced, agile, chaotic, really fun, but so unpredictable and unstructured. But I will say, like, there are a lot of things that that are really similar to running a gym in terms of, how you lead in a business and how you manage a team and how you, build that culture around the vision of your business. Like, it's all really similar, regardless of the size and how many people you have working for you. That's still been the most important thing, and it still is, like, in the business that within Mumly now. In terms of research, that's a great question. So it really this wasn't intentional, and I can't take credit for, having this vision, and having the insight to do it this way. But I think a lot of mums were sick of being told what to do or what they needed. And I think a lot of big brands and a lot of big tech companies are run by men. And that's not to say men have no idea what women need or what mums need, but I think in large part, women just wanted someone to ask them, what do you need? What's going on? What are you struggling with? So we spent a lot of time listening and asking questions, like 2 years worth of time. We still do that. And it's really just sitting down and being like, what's your biggest struggle? What keeps you up at night? Like, what would, if you had a magic wand, what would be 3 wishes that would make this easier for you? And our product has evolved a lot over the course of the 2 years because we've been able to be agile and change and adapt to what moms tell us they need. But the research process of has been one of my favorite parts. It's been really interesting and really fun. So we do have a team who does do that with us, and we do it internally and externally. But yeah, that's been really cool.
Yeah, it's something like that complex. I mean, it would just grow. I'd imagine. I saw the website, and I could see this. It would have just kept growing. The more problems that need solving, and I mean, the development process would just have to keep adding more and adding more. And to let you know, we're also building an app for our gym. So we've also had some of the growing pains, to learn how to do this the same way you described. And it's tough. You think it's going to look like one thing, and then as you come up with a problem, it just keeps adding on. And we thought it'll be all done in 6 months, and here we are,
oh my gosh,
14 months later, type of thing. But I can't imagine something like this. It's so complicated. and not only just trying to solve the problems, but then how do you present it in a way that's really effective and intuitive to use from your phone, and then organize the community in there. Then how do you, I can't imagine you would have spent hours chatting to people, but the conversations would have been amazing.
Yeah, it's been really fun actually. Lots of really cool conversations. We've gone through like 3 different iterations of the app, 3 different designs, like completely, literally like ripped it apart and started things from scratch, like 3 different times, which has been exhausting, but man, so many learnings. And over the course of the last 2 years, I've been really lucky to attract some really cool and really talented people to the team. And, you know, there's that funny quote that always says like, oh, if you're the smartest person in the room, you need to find another room. I have like never felt so humbled in my life in terms of the rooms that I've been in over the course of the last couple months, to the point where I'm like, should I even be in this room? But yeah, it's been really fun, to be honest, to learn and grow and be in those pressure types of situations. And I do think they aren't for everyone. They are a bit of an acquired taste, but they're definitely exactly kind of what I love. And yeah, it's been, well, you guys would experience building an app. It is really difficult, and you have to have a lot of really hard, tedious conversations about the flow of this click into this screen and what happens here. And there's so many different use cases. And I've never had so much respect for, you know, simple, elegant apps like Instagram, where you're like, there's actually so much that goes into this that people don't realize. But yeah, I love it.
Mel, can you talk on the one of the things that I always think about with talking about motherhood and the issues that come up when there's a lot of discussions around gender equality and those kinds of things. And one of the things that always sort of sits in my mind is that as guys, you never have to really consider that your career ambitions or your path towards success or whatever this thing we're all chasing is going to be disrupted by something, disrupted or diverted, or, you know, however you want to put it, not to put it in it, you know, it is what it is. As a female and as someone who has ambitions and is, you know, you've had the gym, and then I'm guessing at some point you're like, well, yeah, I probably want to have a kid, or I don't know, maybe it was a surprise, but you know, that thing gets railroaded and it's like, oh shit, this is what I'm doing now. And, you know, Emmy's about to turn 3, you got a new one on the way. How do you see that? How do you reconcile being ambitious, but then also wanting to be an ambitious mum and be really good at that, and the business aspirations?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I constantly feel pulled in both directions. I never feel like I'm fully showing up 100% in either one, which is something I think I've struggled with emotionally and mentally over the course of the last 3 years. Really, it's when I did have Emmy, I gave myself the opportunity to just figure out, you know, maybe you do want a mom full time. Maybe that's what you love and that's what you feel most passionately about. And if that is what you really want to do, then, you know, I wanted to give myself the opportunity to explore that as a possibility. And it turns out that there are other things that were, you know, tugging at me that I found myself wanting to explore for myself and my own, you know, personal ambitions. And that turned out to be, I want to also have a career. And there are some things that I really want to do here as Mel, the individual, outside of Mel as a mom. So the result of that is, yeah, I never feel like I'm giving 100% to my business. I also feel like I'm never giving 100% to my daughter. And that's a real shit feeling, to be honest. And sometimes that results in me feeling really pissed off at the way that things are structured, because I'll have conversations, you know, with other, you know, with men about it. And I'll be like, do you feel this way? You know, who have kids, and they're like, no, not really. I don't feel like I'm, you know, having to choose, or I don't feel like I'm kind of torn in that same way. So sometimes like you end up being a bit like, oh, you know, I wish it wasn't hammered into my head from when I was a kid, that I had to choose or I had to make the choice, or there was a point in time where it was going to be a matter of, all right, well, you've worked hard at your career up to this age, but now you're a mom and now that's what you do. And I wish there wasn't this, like we were talking about before, Polly, like this expectation of, well, I guess that's what I have to do. And it's hard, but part of what does motivate me at the end of the day is knowing that I want to be able to show my daughter that when she wants to have kids, she doesn't have to make that choice between being a mom and giving up on some of the things that she might want to achieve on a personal level. And that's really important to me. And I think every woman should have that opportunity. But how that happens, I have this thing within our organization, within Mumly, where it's like, you can't just come to me with problems, you have to come to me with solutions, And I feel like this one, I'm a bit contradictory because I feel like I just have problems. I don't have the solutions necessarily, or if they are solutions, they're very big, like systemic solutions that are very hard to achieve. But yeah, does that kind of answer your question?
It does. What I take away from that is that there's an acknowledgement that, like, the sacrifice is, if you want to have those two things, that like you saying I'm not showing up 100% in either of them obviously shows that you have high expectations of yourself. But it's also like an acknowledgement that, like, hey, if you do want to do these multiple things that both require a lot of energy, it does mean compromise to an extent. But you also can't say that putting time into developing Mel and what's important for you is also not going to benefit Mel as a mum. So it's like, well, maybe it takes away from literal hours that you could spend with your daughter face to face each week, but it also gives back to you in another way, which allows you to be better for her. So it's not binary, is it? It's kind of like this whole mash of what it takes for you to feel fulfilled.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that there are synergies that are created, like between the two of them, that are immeasurable and often, go unacknowledged. But I think that's a really good point, in that I feel like I'm a better mom because I am doing this, that because I do have Mumly, because I am pursuing the things that I want to pursue on an individual level. I definitely think I'm a better mom because of it. And I also think that I'm better for my business because I am a mom, and
totally.
That just makes you efficient as anything. And it means that the time that you are at work, you're so on and you're so focused and you're so in, you just get shit done. So the whole kind of being torn and not feeling like I'm giving 100% to either camp is probably, to be honest, it's probably a lot in my own head. And just as you said, based on the pressures or expectations that I put on myself. But yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think there are definitely some synergies there.
I agree. Yeah, good point. So you're better for Emmy because of what you're doing. I share what you said as a father, because it's the same for parents, but not everyone feels it, like the guilt, because I'm definitely not 100% at this business or at home. And I'm always trying to make up for one or the other, on a week-to-week basis, whether it's, put some extra hours in here at the gym late when I shouldn't, or at home trying to compensate for the two. But the way that I reconcile it, this is just my own point of view, and part of my own personal philosophy is the simple lead by example thing, which I was taught when I was really young. And it's just the idea that what I'm doing is going to speak louder. I'm not really great at preaching my point of view, but my way of, affecting the world is by doing what I'm saying. So when people see that I'm being healthy, I'm not great at preaching health. Then eventually, if I'm consistent enough, people will start to see that, oh, that's the change that you can see, etc. And with the parenting thing, and I have seen cases of friends and people that I know who've dedicated all of their time to the kid, which is a great thing. It's like, if you have the means to be able to and be full-time, that's great. But the way I think about the work thing is, like, especially if you like kind of my background where my family wasn't in business, and I'm like the first one to have a business type of thing. I spend my time at home, but I'm also there building something so I can show them what they can do. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to change. I'm out here doing this so they can see it's possible, because they don't necessarily have those possibilities in their, anyway, that's how I kind of see it. Like, we have to go out there, because if you say, like, hypothetically just became the parent, and obviously this is open to any opinions, and you just became a parent to them all the time. I mean, we don't have to hunt for food and we don't have to defend our house anymore. So what is it that I would be doing with that time? I need to show them the new territory of hunting, which is like, well, this is how you go and navigate the world and build something that you believe in and stand up for that type of thing. That's kind of how I see what we're doing, what you're doing is showing, Emmy what she could do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I love the, do what you say, sort of concept, and like, living your truths and really, just making sure that you stay true to your values in terms of how you conduct yourself in life. And obviously being healthy is a huge thing for us and our family. And as you guys, that would be a huge kind of family value for you as well. And that's something that you demonstrate to your kids, right? That's something that's like, this is how we're leading by example, and we're showing you that this is something that we value in this family. And my kids take that all in. I think as well, an important part, an important point to make, that, has really meant that I can do the things that I want to do, is having a partner who is aligned with those values as well. And I do find it is a systemic issue, because it's not just, women that have had these roles hammered into them at such a young age, but it's also been men, and like little boys being like, you have to go out and, support your family and provide and protect, and, all of these like really macho sort of things that I don't know if they, that would be a really hard narrative to grow up and have those expectations as a dad and a father as well. So I think that there is this massive, like, big systemic problem in terms of, like, what's ingrained in women and men at really young ages. But I think we can change that at the family level, and just by leading through, as you said, Polly, leading by example, and having a partner and a husband who's says your goals are just, and your dreams and the things you want to do for you in your life are just as important as mine. And why should I have the right to go and pursue the things that I want to do, and you're just expected to take on the brunt of raising our children? And having someone advocate and stand up for the things that you want to do as an individual is really important. And having, that relationship with your partner, for me anyway, has meant that I feel more encouraged and empowered and motivated to do it as well. But I think that also will enable Emmy to pick a partner and choose someone who supports her and will lift her up in these circumstances, not say, well, you're a mom now and this is what moms do. You know what I mean?
I do. As you're speaking, I'm flashing back to some awkward conversations that I have with my wife. They're hard just because it would two people are trying to pursue things.
Yeah,
and you've got a
hard.
shared pursuit, which is, the raising of the kids. It's tough.
Yeah.
And it's, and as you said, I truly believe you have to, well, you don't have to, but it starts with the relationship between the two people and coming to some sort of agreement on, we're going to agree that this is our common thing. And we both want same thing, which is a happy family, healthy kids who have X and Y, and they know the difference between right or wrong. And then being like, how do we navigate what you and I are doing for that shared goal? It's just tricky.
It is. It's really tricky. It's really hard. And it's meant that, he's had to make changes to how he runs his life. And I think he's been like, totally on board, but it's been quite confronting for some of the other people in his life who, don't make those decisions or haven't really thought about making those decisions for their family. And it's been interesting to see, because even for me, it's like, oh, I don't know, like, should you do that or should you sacrifice that? And he kind of comes from the angle being like, of course, it's just part of, being part of this team and this partnership. And it's like, you're sacrificing so much, and you basically had to put, like a 2-year pause on the things that you wanted to do. And not just, from a career standpoint, but your body and your health and everything that you've gone through on that side of things. Of course, like, I'll start taking calls at this time instead of this time, or of course I'll come home at this time instead of this time. And you know, it's hard because even for myself sometimes, like, you fight these like societal norms or expectations of, no, I should be, you know, the nice quiet wife that's, you know, supportive, and I have dinner ready and I cook. And it's taken a lot of time to like almost undo that wiring and undo that way of thinking, and say, you know what, no, I have every right to show up at, you know, 6 p.m. and he's prepared dinner, and I have every right to have an early call in the morning and he can look after me at breakfast, and I have every right to these things. Like, why should he have more than me, you know? And having him push that and really be supportive of that narrative has meant that this has been able to happen in a much easier way. But I can see in a lot of other relationships where like these things happen on a real subconscious level, that people just kind of get stuck.
Yeah, I can speak from my recent experience that it's like I try to be extremely mindful of that whole dynamic of me being, you know, able to go out and work every day, and Misa being at home with Leo and Hattie and looking after them. But it's very easy to slip into some kind of subconscious kind of thing where you just rely on them to look after the kid. You know, it's just like, it's just, and then you start, in a way you can take it for granted. Like, it's very easy to take it for granted and then be like, oh, but I got to go. I got whatever PT sessions. I got a meeting. So, you know, peace out. Then you're like, fuck, I'm just like falling back on this kind of expectation that she doesn't have anything she wants to do today, you know? So I find myself coming back to them like, no, fuck, you have to, it's almost like you have to kind of, I don't know, try and keep it front of mind that there is a bit of a privilege playing out there. And whether or not you behave differently, like whether or not you choose to take on different roles, it still has to be something you talk about and acknowledge so that everyone feels kind of cool with where they're at.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I can definitely relate. And I think a lot of that comes from like people taking, you know, the men taking initiative and being aware and having it be front of mind. But I also think that there is an element of like women need to start advocating for what they actually fucking want. Because I do think a lot of it happens like you just kind of enable certain patterns to establish, and then you get, you know, 5, 6, 10 years down the line, and like you just have this life crisis, like, or women do anyway, because they're like, who am I now that my kids are older or everyone's in school, and what do I do with myself? And I never really advocated for things that I wanted to do while I was raising kids, and now I'm kind of stuck and maybe even a bit resentful, you know? So I think that it is on both parties to speak up in terms of what their needs are and be able to have that relationship where you can say like, actually, like, I need a break for this is what, you know, or this is what I want to achieve today, or this is what I want to achieve this year, and have those conversations. And I know that's really helped me, but yeah, navigating this space is really, you know, there's no manual, and it's really hard, and it is really individual. But I think we do, as you said, Joey, like have a tendency to kind of fall into these buckets or these roles just kind of naturally, because it is so subconscious and involuntary, that you almost need to be super hyper aware of them in order to kind of break those patterns and avoid that long-term sense of resentment and unfulfillment.
Well, it's so busy at that point in your life. One to however many kids you have, just one. It's so busy, and that's why I think things, you just keep carrying on. And you said that magic word, resent, is a motherfucker, I find, for parents. Because you're so busy. And you got to get on, like, you know, doesn't matter what you've got going on. Their schedule is constant every day, the wake up, the changing. And I feel like resent is one of those ones that just grows like a cancer because you're just trying to carry on. So it's a real dangerous one. And, you know, thankfully we'll always get to a point where things there's just that energy builds up for whatever reason. And then it comes out, and then we have a thing, and then we acknowledge it, as you said, Joe. And then, you know, everything's released again. Resets. But because it's so busy, it'll end up coming back up. I mean, the more you do it, the more you can hopefully you recognize the pattern a little earlier, or at least you can heal a little quicker after that long night where you're talking for 4 hours with tears, and then you know,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, it's a motherfucker.
No,
Sorry.
Could you
this
talk
is for the
on,
parents, not the kids, this podcast, so it's all right.
Could you talk on the thinking like, so when on that ambition piece, and like say your early 20s, mid 20s, whatever age, let's say mid 30s, and you're looking down this pathway of like, I want to achieve these things in my life, and I'm in a job, or I'm transitioning into a job that I'm really excited by. And then you also got this thing in the back of your head, maybe like, oh, I want to start a family someday and do all that. Does that thing in the back of the head detract from your ability? Like, how does that affect your ability or your desire to be ambitious and go for your goals in the present?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I mean, to be honest, there was a big chunk of my life where I didn't think I was going to have kids because I felt so ambitious and with things that I wanted to do career wise, whether it be banking or starting my own business. There was a period of time where I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able, because I know that if I have kids, I'm going to want to be a real present mom. I'm going to want to be, you know, all in when it comes to parenting. But I also like have these really big dreams and things that I want to do as an individual. And I couldn't figure out how you make that work, you know, just conceptually. I was like, I don't think this adds up. And I know for me, I can't speak for other women, but I know for me, like the real magic bullet and in terms of what changed my mind was really meeting my partner and meeting someone who I felt like, you know what, okay, I could have both here. Because I have someone who is really supportive and actually wants to co-parent. Because I think in my head, the way I was thinking about it, you know, previously, like whether it be in my early 20s or whatever it might be, it was like, if we decide to have kids, it will be me. You know, I will be the one looking after the children. I will be the one raising the baby. I will be the one up at, you know, the middle of the night. And it is a bit of a flawed construct because I think dads are becoming, you know, increasingly more involved and you know, more of a partner in parenting. And, you know, meeting Hamish and obviously being with him and establishing that relationship and learning about him was really what changed my mind. And I will say though, kind of to your point, Polly, like you just kind of figure it out. You just kind of like find a way to make it work. And it's just kind of like everything is so busy and it happens so quickly and there's so much going on. But I mean, if I could go back and talk to, you know, 20-year-old me or 25-year-old me who has like, you know, goals of working in investment banking and, you know, providing for my whole family and doing all this stuff, I would say like, you'll figure it out. It'll be okay. But you've got to ultimately like advocate for what you want. And then you'll make it work. Because, you know, I have friends of mine now who, I have a good friend of mine and she is, you know, high up in a content business, like works at News Corp. Like she's just an absolute machine. Like she's just boss woman. And she decided a couple of years ago she wanted to have a kid by herself. And she did. And she made it work. And she's still climbing up the ladder and like kicking ass. And were things hard for her? For sure. You know, harder than not having kids? Absolutely. But could I say now that you know, I was right to think that I had to give that up in my 20s. No, I think I was wrong in thinking that, but I do think that it is a very valid concern, and I do think that it is something that a lot of women would be thinking about. But yeah, I think you figure it out like anything else, right?
Yeah, and so it didn't detract from your want to advance your career. Like it didn't slow you down with any of those things. It was like, no, I'm going to keep doing what I want to do. And then whatever, Hamish popped up. Then you're like, all right, now I'm going to do babies.
Well, I guess in my mind, it was like, no, I'm going to actually choose me. I'm going to choose me and I'm going to choose my career. And unless something comes along that, you know, makes me believe that I could potentially do both, then I'll consider having kids. And maybe that's extremely selfish, perhaps, and that's kind of how it's been since. It's like, no, you know what? I'm going to continue to choose me. And there are certain things at the end of my life that I want to be able to say that I've done. And having kids is one of them. But there's also a whole bunch of other things. So yeah, I think it really just comes down to this whole concept of like choosing yourself and choosing the things that you want to do for you. And I think that there are ways in some situations where kids might detract from that, and maybe it isn't the right choice for people to have kids in that instance. And that, like, far out, it's like a heavy thing to say. Hey, like, it's crazy that that's the reality. But I know for me personally, I was lucky enough to be sent down a path where I could have both. But I know for some other people, that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, sort of as an acknowledgement to a conversation like this, yeah, there are people that aren't in a position to do both. There are people that are unable to have children, right? Whatever, and and that's always like I guess something like that is acknowledged, but it's also outside of kind of what we're trying to get at here. Not to be respectful of those things. Yeah, I just see it as what I see as a theme of sort of all this. You said selfish a moment ago, like you said maybe that was selfish of me, but like being selfish is kind of what we're getting at in a way. It's like finding out what you want and making that thing happen, and then even you saying advocating for what you need as a mum. That's like being selfish. Like, what do I need to be good at this role, and to and I think that part of this guilt thing, or this thing that we I don't know, like a lot of what we're throwing around in parenthood is like people aren't very good at being selfish sometimes. Like, so in behaving like that, they don't articulate what they want, and then the communication falls apart, and then problems arise, whether in the relationship or whatever in the business.
Oh yeah, like motherhood martyrdom is probably one of my like biggest pet peeves. It's just thinking you have to sacrifice or give up, or for whatever reason, like your desires or needs are less than since you have become a mom. That's one of the major messages that we're trying to break with Mumly. But that's a huge thing that I think, I know from generations past, it's just kind of been, my mom just sacrificed so much, and my mom gave up so much for me, and it's almost like put on this pedestal. When you actually think about it, you're just like, that's kind of fucked up. Like my mom had to give up all the things that she wanted to be. And that would have been really hard for her. And that would have been a lot of grief there, and like resentment and anger. And, somehow we're putting this up on a pedestal. Like, thanks, mom, for just sacrificing all your personal dreams and aspirations and goals to be a mom to us. And then that gets passed down as some kind of like sick rite of passage. So I think this whole concept of martyrdom, like, you don't pick yourself anymore. You're not important anymore, or you're not as important as you were. Other things are more important. Really gets hammered into your brain, and it does get labeled as things like selfish if you do start to advocate and speak up and actually have a point of view in terms of your needs as an individual. So yeah, you can still see it's very much alive in my head still. Like, oh, maybe I am a bit selfish for advocating for what I want to do, but rationally that that's not true. I was very irrational, a lot of these thoughts. But yeah, this whole concept of martyrdom in motherhood, very, not okay.
No, I think it's, you could say that it's, I don't know what the word is. It's not dangerous, but it can lead to, some, just some kind of self-worth, mental health issues down the track. I know that I had a close friend who, probably not the right example, but, gave everything to their son, and, stopped her career, etc. And then anyway, he grew on to end up being in high school. She homeschooled, and he went on to start high school, and eventually, she came out the other end of motherhood, and had dedicated every ounce of her being to raising this kid the best way possible. And then she basically went into a period where she was lost, and she didn't know who she was anymore. And because there's certain years pass, and then you pass into your late 40s, at that point, it was really hard for her to like find an identity again. And, you know, maybe that's just one place that it could lead to. But I really believe that, that mothers should be going out and trying to be who they want to be, or, you know, trying to be true to whatever that is, that however that is that they want to kind of realize themselves or express themselves. And it's not it's not a handbrake, or just a stopper. When you do have kids.
Yeah. And I think that's true for a lot of women. And I'm kind of experiencing that with some of my friends who have older kids who are now all in school, and all of a sudden they have all this time, right? And they're asking this question around like, well, who am I, you know, as an individual? And I don't think that we necessarily like set moms up in a way that allows them to ask those questions at an early stage and figure out, you know, what are, you know, who do I want to be outside of being a mom? And I think that's a really valid question. Because even, you know, if I wasn't a mom and I was, you know, just doing Mumly, I still have interests in like a million other things that you're pursuing. You know, you're never just doing one thing fully. But yeah, with moms, that seems to be, you know, you almost don't have the brain capacity to think of anything else if you're fully submerged into it. So I think we almost need to be forcing moms to ask themselves those questions. Like, what do you want for yourself? You know, in 10 years time, like, what do you want to be doing? And,
yeah, that's right.
And who do you want to be? And so you can avoid these instances, because it is like, I don't think that the story you told is like an anomaly. I think that that's the majority.
I find myself over the years having the conversation with mums that train in our gym. Paul, you'd have this conversation a lot too, where they're at home, they're trying to raise kids, they're trying to, you know, look after the house, whatever. They're really in the thick of like young mum kind of life, where it really is like, okay, you probably don't have much capacity to think of anything else right at this moment. But they're trying to get back in touch with their training or keep their training going and get to the gym a few times a week. And, you know, and the conversation often goes to like, look, I can get down here, but I just, you know, leaving the house at night and leaving the kids, I feel guilty, you know, like walking away from them now. And then, you know, there's me like early 30s, like fit dude. I'm like, no, you got to put yourself first. Like, training, important, you know, like I know all about this shit. And, and I always feel like really, you know, like out of my depth, you know, even so I feel more in my depth these days because I, you know, whatever, got a kid. But this, you know, I see that kind of dilemma, and I think about through this conversation, I think about some of the mums that train at our gym, and you're like, fuck, you can see the hustle that they're putting on to like make it work.
Yeah.
The kids in, sometimes they're like babysitting someone else's kids, and so they turn up here with like 5 kids. They're just trying to get like 3 sets of squats done. Like, just if I can just do 3 sets, I'm happy, and none of the kids dies. It's, you know, it's just like I'm like, fuck, that's the reality for a lot of folks.
Oh man, it is. And you touched on mom guilt a little bit, and that is powerful juice, that stuff. Like, my God, that just on a daily basis, I don't think there's an instance where I don't, you know, question, like, am I doing this right? Or am I doing a good job? And that's all you really want to feel, right, at the end of the day. But, you know, moms are they're just incredible. And I have so much, I have so much respect and admiration for, you know, those moms who do choose to like show up at the gym and, you know, they choose themselves, because it does, like, you are fighting against that. I should stay home and, you know, read you this book while you're eating your dinner. And that's what your brain tells you should do. So it does take a lot of courage to be like, no, you know what? I'm going to go do my 3 sets of squats tonight, and I'm going to go do something for me. And that's really important. And because mom guilt, my God, like, I don't think anybody's immune to that shit. That one's really tough.
Yeah, that's a powerful force of nature that's obviously been honed over many hundreds of thousands of years to make sure that kids get looked after because the dads are off doing
Yeah, it probably is, you know, from an evolutionary standpoint, a pretty good tactic to just make sure the kids stay alive. But yeah, I know we deal with it in the office. Like, we have a lot of moms there who are in the office, and you know, kids sick at home or something happens, or, you know, their kids in daycare, and you can see like they get a call and they're shattered, you know, they're like, they just feel like, I should be there. This shouldn't be happening. I shouldn't be in here, you know, working on my career. I should be with them. And that's like totally irrational, right? It's just like, your kid will be fine. They're tougher than we think. All will be well. You're fine, you know, but it is this like constant battle of like the irrational versus like rational way of thinking about it. And there's so much emotion because you've never loved something so like much more in your life than these little beings, and all you want is to do right by them. And that can take over your decision making in a lot of ways. And I think it's, yeah, for me anyway, it's a constant battle every day of like weighing up, like, okay, Mel the individual, Mel the mom, and how do I balance this out, and how do I show up for how do I show up for myself, how do I show up for my kid, how do I show up for my partner, how do I show up for my business. And you're constantly just like juggling and balancing and trying to figure out where that makes sense on a daily basis. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's life, hey.
The life.
Mm-hmm.
Mel, I think that's a really good spot for us to wrap it up. Can you did you have any kind of, you know, closing thought you wanted to share, and or where can people find out about Mumly? How can they get in touch? How can they get, you know, see what you're offering?
Oh wow, closing remarks. My gosh, I feel like I'm on a TED Talk. Just gotta like,
I mean, you know,
drop the mic drop at the end here.
I feel obliged. It's more if there was something that you were like, oh, I really want to tell you guys this, but you didn't ask me, you know.
Oh no, I feel like we had a really good chat. I mean, I'm sure after, you know, there's always like, hang up the phone and you're like, oh, I should have said this and would have said this. And I mean, obviously I've got 1,000,001 opinions about, you know, being a mom and what that looks like in today's day and age and how we can improve it. And trying to do that over at Mumly. So you can find us, I think, just either on socials, I think Mumly app, or our website, mumly.com. But if you're interested in what we're doing and kind of curious and wondering what's this crazy chick been on about for an hour, you can go check that out. So yeah.
And that's MUMLI, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we could have gone all sorts of places. I would have liked to have talked about, or just to hear your opinion on the whole birth thing, because we chatted earlier on about it. But, you know, I think maybe we could get together again. You know, maybe it's a year's time or something, because 1, your app will be launched. 2, you'll be mother of 2.
Yes.
Joy, your kid will be 1. It'll be cool to catch up later and we can go into more on another call, eh?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. I mean, he's due in about 6 weeks and we're planning a home birth and we've got all that set up. So I'd love to talk through that experience, and I'm just so excited. And yeah, like mom of 2, maybe I'll just be humbled and I'll come on here and be like, guys, don't do it.
I had it all wrong.
Oh my God.
That's going to be beautiful.
Yeah, no, we're so excited, and I already feel like he's part of the family, you know, but a bit louder on the outside.
We're super stoked for you. Yeah, it's I wish you all the best with that, and I guess, you know, we'll hear from you around that time, anyways. Does he have a name yet, or is this under wraps?
He does, but it's a surprise.
Fair enough. I like that.
Do you want to break the Brothers podcast?
Like my whole family finds out on your podcast.
That's right.
Cool. Thanks so much for having me, guys. It was so nice to catch up.
No, absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, cheers.
See ya. Bye.